Satoru Gojo is one of the most iconic characters in anime. Fans eat up everything he does, and he was behind a lot of, if not most of the viral moments in the anime. While never number 1, he's always been in the top 3 for popularity polls. So it's undeniable that people love Gojo, which is exactly why he got his own arc and now one of his own seasons in the anime. And yet, he's still one of the most controversial characters. In fact, Akutami apparently said in an interview that they made Gojo too strong, and that he acts as a hindrance to the story. As far as I can see, they've never come right out and said they dislike the character, although it definitely seems like Gojo isn't their favorite. Point being, Akutami takes issue with Gojo even though everyone loves him, and for good reason. Supposedly created to represent a clear ceiling in the world of JJK, Gojo is one of, if not the strongest characters in the series. While this is really cool, it can also be a hindrance, as Akutami puts it. JJK is meant to be a darker story. Not dark like Berserk, but darker than your typical Jump series. And it's kind of hard to do that when you have a character like Gojo. A character that can show up, gravity yeet someone across the map, and nuke them out of existence. All by taking their glasses off. For example, Ouji and Todo were struggling against Hanami. Not losing, but definitely sweating it. Then Gojo pulls up, insta-nukes Hanami, and the fight's over. Unless you're talking about characters like Geto, Sukuna, or even Toji, Gojo one-shots everybody. Literally just looks at most people and they're done for. If the goal is to make a series with a lot of intense fights, it's kind of a pain to do that when there's a character who low diffs most people. It reaches a point where anyone could die in a fight and fans could be like, okay, what was Gojo doing? Why wasn't Gojo doing anything? Why didn't Gojo help? Everything becomes about Gojo. That is why Gojo needed to be taken out of the story, and you can see the kind of change this had. As soon as this happened, there was a very noticeable change in tone. So there's good reason to not like Gojo. He's cool, but he is absurdly strong, to the point where it's hard to give him challenging fights and everything in the story is about him. Now, while I recognize that argument and find it perfectly valid, I think I speak for Gojo fans when I say that isn't really a bad thing. But before I explain what I mean, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. Now, is Gojo being so strong problematic? Yes. But does that negate all of the insanely cool moments he has in the story? No. There is a reason Gojo is one of the most liked characters in the story. The consistency with which he has amazing fights has made him one of, if not the face of JJK. His one clash with Jogo is great to read in the manga and was an instant viral moment in the anime. Gojo is able to flex on everyone because he's so strong, and not like the 7 Deadly Sins nonsense where it just turns into a power level pissing contest. Gojo is a bit cocky, but he can back it up. The dude can make you lost in the concept of infinity and manipulates gravity. Not something too many other people can do. Point being, people like cool fights between cool characters. Gojo is a cool character. His cool abilities make him even cooler and make his fights addicting to watch. Maybe it makes the plot a bit complicated at times, but it makes for an entertaining story at the end of the day. Now, to that, you might say that this is also a problem. That even disregarding the problems he creates for the plot, Gojo is still overrated because of his cockiness. This has apparently been implied by Akutami, suggesting that Gojo has no personality. This stems from the idea that Gojo's whole personality is just flexing on people and buying into his own hype. And to that, I have 2 responses. First of all, no. Gojo has plenty of personality. He's one of the funniest characters in the story. Literally, in the first episode, jokes about souvenir shopping and then takes pictures of a beat-up Megami to show to the other kids. Actively teases Nanami, one of the most uptight characters. Also convinces Ouji to pretend he was dead just for giggles. Oh, and he shows that he's into movies when he trains Ouji. Like, these are not the qualities of a god that just happens to step down and keep the balance. These are the qualities of a unique, quirky character. You could even argue he's one of the most emotional characters in the story, as he can be seen dying of laughter in one scene and losing his mind over the loss of a friend in another scene. Granted, he usually keeps it pretty cool, but Gojo gets very angry when the people he's protecting are threatened. This includes his personal mission to keep the conservative factions of the sorcerer world in check, and create a world where Yuji's generation isn't weighed down by all of these arbitrary barriers. Just because he doesn't get super emotional all the time doesn't mean mean he's a shallow character. Gojo also has a fair amount of character development. I don't want to say too much about it since a lot of it would be spoilers for the upcoming season, but Gojo goes through a clear transformation in this arc. Again, it's nothing crazy, but he starts out as a very happy-go-lucky character. By the end, he's still that kind of guy, but now his motivation and sense of responsibility change a bit in the face of tragedy. Granted, Gojo doesn't change that much throughout JJK, but it's like I've been saying. Just because he doesn't go through a bunch of character growth doesn't mean he's a one-dimensional character. Now, that's my first point. Yes, Gojo buys into his hype, but he has plenty of personality despite that. He's not the most sophisticated character, but he has personality and he has depth. Now, my other point is, even if Gojo does buy into his own hype, so what? Is it really a bad thing if a character is strong and knows it? Cool abilities and fights can make a character cool, but you can also have a character who's cool because they're not afraid to flex on people. Just take Kenpachi from Bleach. Not only is Kenpachi strong, but he is very aware of how strong he is and isn't afraid to let people know. And this is what we see with Gojo. Take his fight against Jogo, for example. Openly invites Jogo to try and touch his hand just to show him that it's never gonna happen. It's funny, but it's also a huge flex. It displays the power gap between the two characters and makes the fight that much more entertaining. So on top of his cool abilities, his fights are made even better by flexing on people, like taking off his blindfold and making all kinds of bold statements. That's really what it comes down to. People like characters that are bold. Now, in Gojo's case, it gets a bit complicated because is it really bold when you have godlike powers? But even then, he's not afraid to flex on people. Maybe it makes him a bit cocky, but if it makes for cool fights, then it really shouldn't be a problem. Although one could argue that in Gojo's case, the problem isn't so much that he is cocky, but that his fans are cocky. That people hype Gojo up so much that it makes him an extremely overrated character. If you are one of those people, then that's fine. That is your opinion, and nobody can really change that. But in all honesty, this isn't the case. Like I said before, Gojo has always been in the top 3, but he's never been number 1. The fact of the matter is that Gojo is a fan favorite, even though he's not a lot of people's number 1 favorite. Even Gojo's Japanese voice actor feels the same, as he's admitted that his favorite character is actually Nanami. Which is fine. A character does not need to be number 1 to be a fan favorite. You can have people like Megami or Sukuna more and still recognize that Gojo is a cool character, which is clearly the case. His OP abilities and cocky attitude have made him a fan favorite among JJK fans, and have also helped him become one of the most iconic characters in anime. But now I'd like to hear what you think. Do you buy into the Gojo hype? Why do you think people like Gojo so much? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then make sure to check out my recent video on JJK Season 2. In that video, I explain why Season 2 will set the new standard for anime. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.